Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Pixelcast. And today I have a special guest with me, Mr. Ro Panuganti.
Hello.
And then, I work at a grocery store, and we sell, various herbs and spices and things like that. And a lot of the times, we're out of time. Speaking of out of time,
Oh my god, that was the joke.
that was the joke. Kill me
Okay.
now.
Keep going.
Yeah. So we're out of time. But speaking of that, how do we manage work, school, and doing VGM covers? Ro, please talk about it.
I'd be happy to. So, a lot of the questions and discussions everyone has is how do you make music while you have all these other responsibilities? Whether or not music is your career or, even something you're taking as a serious hobby, how do you make time for it so that you enjoy something you love so much while working or while being in college or high school? Or, well, in high school, you should have no excuse, but that's a joke, by the way. But yeah, it's really interesting, and I've had a bit of back and forth with it because I've almost always uploaded every single month for the last 5 years. Like, it's become a second nature to me. But for people starting, or for normal people, it's just incredibly different. And I guess, like, the first talking point I want to share is kind of like, I guess, have you been making music since, like, you were in high school, or?
I mean, when I was in high school, I was taking a music comp class, so anything that I was doing was for the class. Like, I never made anything for YouTube or for myself.
Okay.
So, on like almost a daily basis, I was writing a new song or like just like a new riff or something. But usually towards the end of high school is when I started writing more original stuff onto, in my real life. And then I started, when did I start doing covers? I did about 2 years ago, I think. Yeah, so at the time I was unemployed, so I had a bunch of time to dedicate to learning, all the mixing and EQ and all that fun stuff for covers. And even when I was unemployed and had all the time in the world, it still took me a while to get through the covers because I'm not a very efficient person trying to work on covers. Because it it can, like, once I find the song that I want to do, then I have to learn it on the guitar, and then some days I just don't want to learn it, so I'll put that off for a day or two.
Right.
And I think it's just like, I never had a strict deadline, so I never took it too seriously.
Right.
Yeah, definitely, like, I had way more time unemployed doing it.
That's interesting, though. Like, I don't know, having the free time is definitely one of those things. Like, there's two kinds of categories, I guess, for people who find themselves unable to make the covers and music, and there's either people who have the time and are looking for motivation or knowledge, and then there's people who feel they don't have the time to employ any of it or, also learn. So I feel like when you have the time, the only thing that's really missing is that, like, fire in you where you're like, I want to make this. I want to learn how to play that song, or I'm going to write a metal version of this song. And I don't think it's easy to get that. But in high school, I watched the first people I did. I figured out how to record, and I'm a very sloppy person. I think until, like, last year or something, I didn't really check if, my videos were lined up perfectly or if I was in focus or not. And it does hurt you, but my eagerness to release something that sounded good, at least, kind of superseded that. Like, looking forward to hearing someone say this was good is what drove me to constantly put out material. Like, too much.
Yeah. I'm kind of in a weird boat where I'm a sloppy perfectionist, if that makes sense. Like,
it does.
like, I want to make sure everything is perfect and on point, but I'm not going to spend 2 days working on a rhythm track just because I can't get, like, a certain chug sounding the right way, like, I'll play it,
Yeah.
I guess, like the more typical rock and roll style of sloppy playing, but like, you know, like that's part of the reason why it takes me a little bit to put out music.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, there's nothing wrong with taking time either. I think one of the biggest things that I hear when I talk to people is either they don't know how to, the get starting of anything. You're doing your homework, you're doing any sort of project. The hardest thing is to say, okay, shut up me, we're just gonna do this, and you get familiar. But, DAWs are scary. Video editing looks scary. And I think Steve Vai once said this, a guitarist I really like, you have to kind of visualize your end product. And I take that one further by saying you have to really visualize enjoying that final product too. And then, that's kind of what got me into the nitty-gritty, to where I was like, okay, every time I'm at the bus stop and I have data, I guess, or I'm at the library waiting in college and stuff, let's go on YouTube and look up one mixing tutorial, get one idea. And slowly you start learning, like, oh, I shouldn't use that much gain, or oh, I should play on time or it sounds terrible. And I feel like every little crack of time I was using to read on something or get ideas for something. And eventually, like, you still have to practice your instrument. But managing your time that way really, really helps you in the learning stages. Like, if you don't know what, Reaper is, for example, and that's your issue, then just ping someone who does, ask them if they have 20, 30 minutes to just go over some basic stuff. A lot of that helps. And, there's great tutorials out there. Family Jewels and Insane in the Rain Music have some of, like, the most recommended ones, and there's tons of new ones too. But, like, it's just like you have more time in life than you think sometimes.
Yeah, I think like one thing that people may or may not realize is, like, when you're doing a hobby and you want to be really good at it, you got to invest many hours behind the scenes before you can put out whatever the product is, whether it's music or art, like crafts and all that. And I think that's one thing that maybe will turn a lot of people away, was that you can't just be a guitar player and then put out music or whatever. You have to, you have to sit down and do your homework of, how do I use this DAW? How do I
program drums?
How do I program drums? And all of that. So I think there's definitely a barrier of entry, not only with money, but also time. Because if you're like a full-time student and you're doing school from 8 to 3 or whatever, and then you have to come home and do 2-3 hours of homework, you might not want to work on anything anymore. You might just want to kick back and relax. So I think that I can definitely see that that's part of the struggle of being in school or with, like, a full-time job, taking over those hours, because you can't really be relaxed learning all of this music stuff. You definitely have to invest in a bunch of time.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, that explodes into so many topics that you mention it, like, one being, of course, like, I get asked a lot about my tones. And one of the things that all guitarists, I'm sure, the adage, tone is in the fingers. And the problem people have with this is they don't buy it because they're unhappy with the gear side of what they own. And I always have this conversation with pretty good guitar players who I feel like should be able to achieve something, but I no longer have that excuse because I invested in gear a lot after, using, okay guitars and for most of my time on YouTube. So I used to have the excuse and now I don't. But, people are always asking, how do you get that tone? Just tell me the settings. I don't care about tones in the fingers. But at the end of the day, that's basically looking for this one-click solution to the problem you've been having. And I mean, I purchased an Axe Effects. I took like months before I was actually really, really able to get something sounding good out of it, because it was super realistic. It's not like a magical box. And you mentioned full-time work and student. I think both of those are actually pretty different in terms of how to balance putting out covers. For example, when you're a student, you come home after class, your time is not your own. If you have a project due, if you have homework due, group projects, eventually it is, in my opinion, a little bit harder to put out covers depending on how rigorous your schooling is, compared to when you're just working. Hopefully you'll be back after 5 or whatever, unless you have a less traditional job time schedule. Because right now that's what I'm doing. I work 8 to 5. I come home, and I have all the time in between to make music. Not that I want to, but
Yeah, that's kind of like, I can talk about this. Like, I have a nighttime job. I close at a grocery store, so my hours there are from about 2:30 to 11 at night. And I have the commute and all that too. So I leave there at 11. I get home maybe like 11:45 or so. So between like midnight and 2 or 3 o'clock is when I'm awake. And then when I wake up for the next day, I'll wake up maybe 10 or 11. But then I have to get ready for work and have to leave by about 1 o'clock, 1:30, just because of commute and traffic and all that. So it's definitely a little bit harder now because I have a slightly shifted hours. That's kind of why I haven't put out a whole lot of music right now, and I've had to actually take off some projects that I've been doing for Pixel Mixers, just because there's no way I could do it in time. So I think it's definitely a product of what hours you work and like how your body is used to it. Because if I wanted to, I could be I could be a little bit smarter and like go to bed immediately. That way I'd have like the morning to work on music and stuff like that, or other things like that. But yeah, it sucks.
It does. And I like that we're taking at least the first half of this to discuss the challenges, because there are a lot of them. And some things I find, like, I have a lot of friends who study music, and I mean, just from my personal experience, not stirring up controversy, being an engineer was harder in terms of the rigor of all of the work, but I was spending all that time on computers and stuff. When I got home, all I wanted to do was music. Now, if you're studying or working in the music world, I'm also curious because these people are working around scales and reading up on music history and probably recording and writing for music. When they get back home, it almost feels like they might be sick of sound,
Right, yeah.
Like, and they want that mental break, just as I would if I do spend like a weekend working on music, which honestly is how I felt today. So it is a little interesting. And I found pockets of time because instead of, I don't know, going out to parties or being sociable and stuff, I spend a lot of my time just recording covers. And I guess it bleeds into the recommendations, but I use so many templates and hotkeys, and I use Reaper, which is very CPU lightweight, so I could just constantly not have to wait to do things. Which I understand is harder if you use microphones, but, time management.
Yeah. No, I think something you pointed out with, like, the music students who do that, I know, like, going back to what I was saying, because in high school I took a music composition class. I mean, technically on record it was for 3 years, but I was in the class for 4. That's a whole different story we can get to later. But like you were saying, like, oh, you might get sick of it at the end of the day when you work on it. It's like, and it was only for one period, but like when you're spending a full period dedicated to writing new music, I didn't feel burnt out necessarily, but maybe that was because that was like the beginning of my musical journey, that was just learning how to play guitar and learning all this new music.
Exciting.
Yeah. So like I would always come home and be like, oh man, this is so great. I can't wait to learn or take what I learned at school and apply it to like the guitar and all that. So I think there's a
Right.
little bit of something like that. If as long as you're still able to do something exciting at the end, I'm sure that it's not going to be as dreading as if you just learned it.
Right, and I mean, some of that might be the content, like because you're still in command of, everyone listening might be a YouTuber and might also be a pixel mixer making covers. All of these things are your choice up to a point, so in a way it's kind of nice. But it can be draining when it's not your choice, or in general if you physically are just making so much music. But and what I mean by that is like if any of you guys do requests, for example, or commission work, or Patreon, you stop doing music you picked in styles you like, in territory and it can be really challenging. And I honestly believe everyone I know who's done this, myself included, does get that burnt out feeling because it stops being just this fun thing you're doing. You're on a mission. And there's a good analogy I thought of to a different kind of profession I won't mention, but basically you have to put out something on command, music on command every week, and it becomes this great big challenge, and that's where time management will hit its absolute core of challenge. Like I know in Stain the Rain music, he's studying music production, he also has to put out a cover every 2 weeks, so you end up having to really choose your time carefully.
Yeah, like you just can't like waste it around, because when your time is limited, suddenly that couple hours you spent lazing around, you could have spent that working on your music and be that much closer to being done with it.
Right. And I think that's the hairiest part of it all. Like, you love music, and everyone who, is in this loves it. And I've always had this conversation with a few people where when I suggest deadlines or things like that, they'll be like, John, no deadlines, we'll just see where this goes. And, more love to you if you can do that, but I know those projects aren't going to go anywhere.
Yeah. Like, I'm definitely in that boat with like the whole no deadline thing, because like there's been a couple songs that I wanted to work on just for me, and I haven't even touched them yet because there's no deadline like I have to do with the Pixel Mixer albums or contests or whatever. But that's kind of why I'm stepping back from the albums for a couple months, just so I can finally get to work on my songs, and hopefully I can have like a mental due date of like this year. So hopefully like the next couple months I can just be like, hey, I'm going to work on this song for October and this song for November and stuff like that.
Right. And I mean, that's so critical because you will get burned out or unhappy if you're doing things you either actively dislike or if you constantly feel like you're not doing the things you love. And I actually have been doing Patreon requests for like a year and a half now. And they were fantastic to introduce me to a lot of music. But at the same time, in all honesty, I did not like a lot of the songs. Even with my own twists and interpretations, it does feel a tiny bit like work, and I still have 3 left, but I was burned out this summer, and I was just like, I'm just putting these out and working every single week, and that's why I actually took a break, put out a different album, and it gives you this like mental solace of like, okay, I'm still me. I don't have to do these requests, and eventually a lot of people just put them to the side altogether, which, I will do. But, like on the positive side of how to manage time management, like if you were to make a cover for next Monday, how would you spend your week to get it done, for example?
Like, let's say I had like 7 days to do a cover.
Correct.
Like, okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because today's Sunday. Well, assuming I'm like balancing it with work and all that, I would say, tonight I'll choose the song that I want to do. What's a song that I can do? Tetris song A, for example.
Okay.
Right? So I'm like, okay, I know the song. I'm gonna listen to it a few times, see what I can do with an arrangement of my own. Like that'll be day one. Just
Okay.
kind of mentally prepare. Then the next day I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna just start playing it on the guitar, and then start writing it down on my music, whatever, Guitar Pro.
Okay.
So I would say like the first 2 days are definitely like gonna be the planning. Usually I can get those done within a couple hours, so that's when I can, work on it at night before I go to bed, or maybe work on it an hour before I go to work.
Yeah.
And then just the next couple days would just be recording the parts. It would be probably the guitars one night, and then maybe some drum programming the next night, like the other VSTs, bass, all
Yeah.
that. So I think if I really put my mind into it, I could do a cover in about a week. It's just a matter of I actually I need that drive,
Right. And I like that you mentioned the other parts of your life that you would be weaving around a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I have more of a classic 8 to 5 schedule, so like yourself, I would pick a song. I would actually here. Let me think. A Chemical Plant Zone. That's a request I have. So tonight I would probably listen to it, and I would just take my instrument and jam on some ideas, like because I prefer to kind of come from inspirations of other bands, and for my legitimate idea, I want to incorporate some Red Hot Chili Peppers, like Mother's Milk era, kind of upbeat, funky stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'll play around with it, and what I'll do is at work, during lunch or something, I'll take a notepad, and I'll write the song in abstract, like, English words. Like, intro here, do some cool licks here, bass guitar intros. And that's how I've done the last 2 albums. I just wrote them down on paper at work during lunch while I chew on my sandwich and make friendly eye contact with older people. And, when I come home, I can make dinner and relax a bit. And then I'll just dedicate Monday, for example. This is what I have to get done today. And I'll pick some reasonable chunk of it. And if you don't know how to make music and you're listening to this for advice, spend that Monday learning the DAW. Skype with someone who knows how to do it. Don't try to tackle everything alone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially like in music, where our whole goal is to share and play music for other people, you might as well work with them too.
Yeah.
So
don't
I would
shoot
take
yourself in the foot.
Yeah, do not put that off like, well, this is just going to be me so I can be proud of it. Be proud of it. Be proud that you worked with other people too. Take all the credit you'd like for your hard work, but there's nothing better than having someone quickly show you how they do it. But yeah, I would dedicate Monday probably to just doing guitars. I like doing rhythm guitar first. And that way I can drive the song around those grooves. So then I'll do drums, maybe like Tuesday, and what I'll do is I'll dedicate only 1 to 2 hours and give myself the ending part of the night something relaxing that I don't feel is a lot of work. Like I'll watch TV or Game of Thrones, or I'll play, a game or something. And all of these kind of activities, I'm trying to like diversify them a little bit so that I'm not constantly listening to music intensely or hurting myself. And usually what I'll end up doing is filming Saturday, edit Sunday, and I don't take more than 2 hours for each of those. The hardest part is honestly just cooling my apartment afterwards. But and I mean, that's probably how I would do it. I would use the previous song I made as a template. In Reaper, it's very easy to select tracks, right-click them, and save as like a little template. And that way, I won't take as long to get at least as good a sound as the last song. So that's just my time management in terms of the literal project and how it fits into my life working full-time. But, if you have a girlfriend or a family or something, it's going to diminish a lot of the time that you have when you're home, I'm sure. I wouldn't know what that's like. I don't know. There's always somebody busier than, and this is like a weird way of motivating. There's always someone who is busier than you, working to do the same, if not a harder task. And I always use that as a means, like, you know, if they can do it, I should be able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, for example, Suko G, a great friend of mine, puts out a video almost every week, maybe more, maybe less. But he has an audiophile and a fantastic ear for music, and he still does it in a week, using a lot of these kinds of techniques while working a full-time job. So if he can do it, I tell myself I can be an engineer and a musician too. So it's things like that. And I don't know, as long as you love the idea of completing a song, you should try to complete a song.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was recently, because for the past like month or two, I've been a little burnt out with all the projects that I took on, and subsequently
Right.
had to, you know, give up. But then, funny enough, you put out your Metroid album, and I listened to it, and I was like, dang, this is like good. And I was like,
Thanks.
I know. And it's just like, he did this while he was working, and it sounds like a professional level studio album. You know, it doesn't sound like someone just did songs and put them together. You know, I can definitely hear like the production quality of it. It's really cool. But like
Appreciate
something
that.
like that, it kind of like re-inspired me, gave me another like push of inspiration. Be like, you know, I can totally do this. I just have to, you know, be better with my time and all that. So I think that's kind of like the next step for me, is like, there's this one project I really want to do, and hopefully I can do it. Like,
Yeah.
that project's gonna be fun. I don't know if I want to spoil it yet or not, but it'll definitely it's taking a very covered song and doing it in a style that I feel like hasn't been around in a couple of years, but maybe I'm just not listening to the right places.
Is it ska?
No, fuck that.
Aw.
No, I
Dude,
was
that would
think-
have been fun, though.
No, I was thinking like metalcore, old like Bullet for My Valentine type of stuff.
Okay, I mean,
like-
when you really get down to like that metalcore sort of sound, I don't think a lot of people have really gone for it.
Not really, because like I feel like the metalcore group kind of moved on to the more progressive metal, kind of like what Rashad does in a way, like the more like heavier progressive
Sure.
metal.
Right, and I mean, like 16 and Mono would be my first guess as someone who's very like he's like dabbled in that area and covers, but it'll be very interesting to see you do something like that.
Yeah, and like if I get inspired enough, I might try to do that specific track be like my intro track to an album if I ever do an album, you know? Because in my head it's
totally.
like I have an intro track and then I have that song, so maybe I can work something out. I don't know. I'm
No,
getting
it's
ahead of
awesome.
myself.
But I mean, that's the idea. I feel like music isn't just about the notes; it's about your plans, and that's why I don't write sheet music or anything. When I get excited about a cover, I start writing like ideas, and how I don't know. I was even talking to like Christian Richardson today, another VGMer, and we were just talking about the new Super Mario Odyssey, and we were just listening to the music together, and then something in one of the tracks like really excited him, and then he just went off to like go start planning it. And that's like the kind of go-getter attitude that will reward you with more music and like more things done. And there's always a reason not to pick up a guitar, but there's tons of good reasons to do so. And I don't know. I think the best message that could really come out of this is there's always going to be a way to manage your time. There's always someone who will help you figure out something you don't know how to do. And obviously Pixel Mixers has a great role in that, I think. So many people figured out hard drive issues or DAW issues or gear questions, or just, hey, what song should I cover? Or, you know, is this any good? And, you know, that's really critical to getting yourself into whatever you want to do. even if you feel like your channel is dying or whatever.
Yeah, like actually, there is an example there. There's a vocalist right now in the Pixel Mixer Discord that is doing like a complete rebrand and everything, and he asked, our tips channel was like, hey, what are some things I can do to make my channel look better and be like more professional? So we were like, do your thumbnails a bit nicer like this, make
SEO.
yes, SEO, and then like making your channel banner and your icon looking good, and it's like just things like that. Like I think that's cool that it's not specifically music help that we can do channel help or inspiration help and stuff like that.
Right. And I mean, like, as cheesy as it sounds, it pretty much, like, everything about my channel and my music, I pretty much owe it to my friends and my community and everyone who's been, like, giving back as much as they're taking and so on. So, it really, I don't know. I have off days all the time, but there's always a good reason to start recording today and start writing music today. And things change, life changes, it gets hard, and at that point, I feel like music is a really strong escape for those people anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, all right. I think I don't know, I really like that conversation.
It was very good. Yeah,
I think
hopefully it helps people.
Yeah, I would definitely love to hear like other people's ways of doing music, whether they also work or do school, and like just how they're able to balance, doing music and all that. I definitely want to hear from other people for that.
If you can't balance, also, that'd be an interesting story too.
Yeah, it's like, did you have to give up one or the other to pursue the other?
Right. Definitely.
Yeah, well, all right. Thank you very much, Ro. I think a lot of people will learn from this one.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. And I hope people manage their time better thanks to the community or this or whatever.
Yeah, so I know it's only been about half an hour, but are you working on anything new?
I guess I could cycle to other stuff from the last episode. I'm also I've been involved in a few materia collective projects, and one of them, I can't say too much about it, but it's coming out in October, thematically correct, and it's a huge orchestra project, but an electric guitar fit in, and they gave me some of the hardest sheet music I've ever had to play off of. I am talking like, they gave me symphonic metal, crazy sweepy stuff, so I'm extremely excited to see that come out. And obviously, in addition to that, I'm actually in a Secret Santa style project started by Shake Elite and Christian Richardson. So instead of giving gifts, we get a random person of a few friends that sign up, and we make a video game cover. And this is the 3rd edition they've done, so I won't say obviously who I have. But I'm thinking of all of my person's favorite games, their favorite songs, and how they like their music, and I'm going to be writing a song for that soon, so it'll be pretty fun.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Oh yeah, what are you doing? I'm so sorry. I'm rude.
Yeah, well, thanks for asking. Aside from I'm doing the Final Fantasy stuff for Pixel Mixers, in my free time, hopefully I can start that one project I was talking about, the fun little metalcore thing. Yeah. And then this is also like way down in the future, but this is an idea that me and what's his name? Dachshund? I don't know how to say it.
Dachshund, yeah.
Dachshund, yeah. This year he did, was it Junime? We did 4 anime covers in June, and we were talking a little bit about it. And I kind of want to start planning it for next year, because I wanted to do anime. That way he can do Junime. So we can kind of just like bounce off of that. But I don't know. Again, getting ahead of myself.
No, definitely. And anime music is super fun.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But that's kind of what I'm doing right now. I'm kind of going into taking a break for like a couple weeks, and then hopefully I can just get enough drive and push covers back out again.
That's exciting. Have you been playing any cool games lately or anything new?
I mean, I played Rocket League a bunch with my friends.
Nice.
Almost too much. But I honestly haven't played a whole lot of games lately. I have been looking into playing To the Moon, I think it's called.
Yeah, To the Moon. I haven't
Yeah.
played it, but
Yeah, one of my friends suggested it, and he's like, it's gonna make you cry. And it's like, sign me up, because I just like torturing myself, I guess.
I've heard it's a great game.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us on this week's episode of the Pixelcast. There's a Google form in the description. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to use that link and let us know what you think. But for now, we will see you next time.
Bye-bye.